This is Rick Russo, producer of the concert, John Cage and Sun Ra. The concert was in 1986, and the subsequent record album, the initial first edition, was in 1987, when I started the Meltdown Records label with Bronwyn Rucker, who's a theater artist and playwright. I had the idea of putting both John Cage and Sun Ra together as a benefit concert to help launch the label. I always felt there was a connection between Cage and Sun Ra, and I wanted to connect the dots. I originally met John Cage in 1975. I was 17 years old. It was at the Avant-Garde Festival of New York, and that event took place over a 12-hour span. And luckily enough, I arrived during the very brief time that John Cage happened to be there. His performance was describing the mushrooms he had gathered along the way to the event. I was fascinated and was asking questions and hanging around him. Finally, he looked at me and said, "Have a nice day." So I walked away, and then about 20 minutes later came back, and he looked at me and said, "Oh, it's you. Here's my phone number. Call whenever you like." So I did, visiting with him. And his neighbor, by the way, happened to be John and Yoko, right next door in Manhattan. I was very fortunate because Cage would critique my scores, and he started attending some of my concerts. I produced an event called the Far Out Weekend, which was dedicated to John Cage, and that was in the late 70s, and it also included the premiere viewing of a hologram that was done of John Cage by the artist Jason Sapin, of Cage performing 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And then it was around a similar time in the 1970s that I met Sun Ra. It was at a Brooklyn club. I had asked him if he had read John Cage's book, Silence, and he told me that he thought he had. The venue for the John Cage Meets Sun Ra concert was Sideshows by the Seashore. It was a former penny arcade on the Coney Island boardwalk that was converted to a performing arts space. Bronwyn and I were producing shows at Sideshows. Just the thought of having John Cage and Sun Ra in Coney Island, which was America's playground, seemed to be a natural fit. The original idea was to bring John Cage and Sun Ra together on stage simply to speak with each other, just to have an exchange, and then maybe a Q&A with the audience. The concert was on Sunday, June 8th, 1986. Cage and Ra had met literally for the first time 2 days prior to the concert at John Cage's loft to discuss the concert and take photos with the New York Times. When the New York Times got wind of the concert taking place, they were calling me continually to arrange a photo shoot. And I called John and I said that the New York Times is driving me crazy. And he replied, "Well, why do you read it?" Which was marvelous. So we subsequently took photos on the roof of John Cage's building. A couple of them are on the reissue of the LP. Certainly the one on the back cover. Great portraits by Marianne Barcelona. Sun Ra had driven in from Philadelphia on fairly short notice to make that meeting 2 days prior to the concert. So after the photo shoot, I talked to them about doing a piece together, and Cage was very concerned that it would appear to be a publicity stunt. And Sun Ra sort of reluctantly agreed, though Sun Ra seemed to be more open to doing a planned piece together. So in fact, John Cage is quoted in the New York Times as saying it's a meeting, not a planned performance. So that was a pretty intense day, and then Sun Ra took both Bronwyn and I out to lunch at Sylvia's, the famous eatery in Harlem. The day of the concert, the atmosphere was incredible. The weather was wonderful, and the boardwalk was buzzing. It was a typical summer day in Coney Island, but it seemed escalated due to the expectation of John Cage and Sun Ra. And Howard Mandel's outstanding account, especially in the revised liner notes, he really captures it all beautifully. When both John Cage and Sun Ra entered the stage, I had a tremendous sense of relief because the concert almost didn't occur. It was really only by chance that Sun Ra made it to the venue. He got lost driving around in Coney Island. So while waiting for him to arrive, I went down to Surf Avenue, and that's when I saw Sun Ra in his vehicle, and he was getting ready to leave. The next block takes you out of Coney Island. I excitedly directed him to the theater, and they made it there. John Cage, on the other hand, insisted on not coming by car. He wanted to take the subway. He had asked me to draw a map on how to get to the theater. The theater was packed to capacity, which was just about 150 people. During the concert, particularly during the segment when John Cage and Sun Ra performed together, or at the same time, Cage would say, Bronwyn opened the doors. It was an enclosed theater, but it had the capability of being opened up. And when that happened, it was just magical because you had the people seated inside, and then you had everybody standing behind those seated people on the outside, looking in. And just what was remarkable to me was the level of quiet that was coming from the public at large, standing on the boardwalk. No one really knew what would happen when these two legends got together. Cage's recent work had been him reading his literary pieces, so that might have been anticipated. And then with Sun Ra, you never knew what would happen. So having them together, it was really an unexpected situation. It was a single reel-to-reel recording, although there was one faulty microphone. That's the result of not doing a proper sound check. I'm delighted that Modern Harmonic has restored the entire concert because it's inclusive of everything that was recorded, including the segments with the faulty microphone, the work that was done with the segments of Sun Ra speaking and June Tyson singing Enlightenment. It's wonderful to have that all together in the best sound possible, giving the source material. I am particularly thrilled with the work that Bob Irwin at Modern Harmonic did on the mastering of John Cage meets Sun Ra. It was a major concern of mine how the original audio elements would be restored. I have listened to the recording hundreds of times prior to the Modern Harmonic release, and listening to the reissued LP and CD, I'm continually struck at audio elements that were previously unheard by me, and points that thought off the meter, so to speak, have been treated in a way that just makes it more robust, more fuller, more true to what actually occurred. The cover art is beautifully done. The artist, John Hunt, has really captured the essence of both artists. The elements relating to the prepared piano, which of course John Cage invented, and also the imagery of the sun, which relates to Sun Ra. Modern Harmonic's use of the available photos, particularly the one on the back cover, had never been published previously. I'm delighted with the entire Modern Harmonic package. And all of the work that they're doing with respect to Sun Ra's work is just incredible. Thunder of the Gods, the Intermediate Arts, and also the Space Age is here to stay. And I think they're all incredibly wonderful. I can't believe the work that's being done by the label. Having the recording available on CD and on iTunes and making it available to the broader the public at large is very, very exciting. An album like John Cage meets Sun Ra can be relegated to the bin of obscurity. It's getting the proper attention and proper notice that it deserves. When the concert was over, and I walked John Cage outside and told him that I would walk with him to the subway. He looked at me and said, "Your place is here." Then he turned around and walked off, sort of fading into the masses of people. And speaking with Sun Ra after the concert, just that we would be in touch and that we would get together again upon his return